My latest book is called Ancient Appetites. It's a story of the Wildenstern family, who are a massively rich family living in Victorian Ireland. They have a number of unusual traditions, one of which is the policy of getting ahead by assassinating one another. The chief character's name is Nathaniel, or Nate, and Nate has just come back to Ireland to discover that his brother has been killed, and it turns out that Nate is the chief suspect. I write for different age groups, some for 5 to 8-year-olds, some books for 8 to 12. But writing for teens, I think you're at that turning point in your life when you're starting to read novels, you're starting to read more serious books, and your reading material is no longer controlled by teachers or parents. And you're starting to explore for the first time. You have the ability to read at a whole new level. And it's just the most exciting time for reading. The books that had their greatest effect on me were the books I read at that time. My last book, Small-Minded Giants, was a futuristic thriller. It was very different from Ancient Appetites. There was a lot more research in terms of science and machinery and environmental effects, whereas Ancient Appetites, set in a historic period, there was an awful lot more research in terms of what was used at the time, what kind of tools, what was going on, Irish history as well as British history. Engimals were creatures who, they're identifiable machines that we would know from this time and this period, but they roam the world of Ancient Appetites as wild animals. So for instance, you might have a lawnmower wandering the streets, or a toaster that gets its kicks from having toast inserted in its back. And I just thought it was a natural extension to have these things as wild animals. Most of my ideas come from the real world. I find if you look at something in a weird way, it will very quickly give you an idea. It could be anything from trying to make a creature out of a shoe, where its laces are tentacles and the top of the shoe is the mouth, or your hairdo's out to get you, so you've got this creature stuck to your head and it whispers in your ears. You can look at ordinary things in a weird way and it'll give you ideas. You can also take weird ideas and make them ordinary. So for instance, you knock on somebody's door and they're an alien and they offer you a cup of tea and some biscuits. I find if you mix weird and ordinary together, quite often it's a very easy way of manufacturing ideas. I first got published actually because I was an illustrator. I went to my Irish publisher, Brian Press. They didn't have any stories for me to illustrate at the time, so I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And they ended up liking 2 of the stories I wrote for them, which became the Mad Grandad stories, kind of for 5 to 8-year-olds, very illustrated books. And from there on, they liked what I did, so they asked for some novels, and it just took off from there. I'm going to be drawing Hugo, who's one of the villains of the piece in Ancient Appetites. Hugo's an old-fashioned villain. He was a wonderful character to work on, and normally when I draw or write characters, I like to draw them as well. I like to sketch them out and just get a feel for them, and also how they're going to look, and just to make sure that I can make them look visually distinctive, which is always important to me when I'm writing. So I'm going to draw them on coloured paper, get as much colour into the picture as possible, but it's going to have to be quite quick, so let's see how we can do this sketch. It'd be very hard to choose between writing and illustrating. For me, it's like eating and drinking. You might want to drink water, you might also want a burger. You don't necessarily want one or the other. So I love both, and I tend to do both together. If I'm writing, I'll always be thinking of how I draw a scene or how I draw a character. If I'm drawing, I'm always thinking about how I can make a story out of it. And that's Hugo. I've written about 14 or 15 books in total. I'm about to publish the 11th. The Ancient Appetites will be the 11th, all for different age ranges. I have a number of books in the works at any one time, so at the moment I'm still working about 3 or 4 books. Books are a bit like kids. You wouldn't really want to pick your favourite. It's very hard to choose. And certainly when a book is finished, I tend not to think about it too much again. Once a book is finished, I can't play with it anymore. So I suppose my favourite book would always be the one I'm working on next.